The following is a special video presentation of the Hennepin County Library.
Hello, my name is M.D. Lake, and welcome to a discussion with Dorothy Cannell and Joan Hess, two mystery authors who insist on calling themselves comedic mystery authors. In a previous segment of this show, we talked about their life and times. In this segment, we're going to talk a little bit more about the actual writing of mysteries, especially their kind of mysteries. But first, I would like to ask you how you came up with your characters. How did you come up with Ellie Haskell and her husband Ben, and how you came up with this incredible myriad of fairly disgusting characters in the Maggoty books and a much more high-class group of people in the Claire Malloy novels. But let's start with you, Dorothy, while Joan is thinking of a way of making me regret having said that.
I wrote my first book, The Thin Woman, during my Donahue period. I've had my soap period, I've had my macrame period. I happened to be watching Donahue one day. In fact, after my children went to school, it was a habit with me to watch Donahue. I would have breakfast with Donahue. And on this particular occasion, Tony Randall was being interviewed on the program, and he talked about a film he was going to be in the imminent future, whatever that time was, I can't remember. And this film revolved around a treasure hunt. And somebody rang me on the phone, or I went up to put my towels in the linen closet. I was into alphabetizing my towels in the linen closet. B for blue and C for cream, and very involved in being a housewife at that time. And as I went about, the great thing about being a housewife is that you do perform all these mindless chores. So while your hands are busy, you can work. In fact, I still say to my children, be quiet, I'm working, and they know exactly what I'm doing as I'm wiping off the kitchen table. And I thought, that's what I'd like to do. I would love to do a book about a treasure hunt, because I loved Cary Grant and the black and white movie era, and I could picture an ancestral home with an elderly relative dying and leaving a vast estate to one of his, or two of his relatives, if they perform certain tasks, one of which would be to find the treasure of the house. So I got that far, and I knew that I wanted my main female character to hook up with an attractive gentleman. But I didn't want to have a boyfriend-girlfriend situation at the beginning of the book, because I wanted the F and F that we talked about, the flash and flicker.
Mounting sexual tension?
Tension, yes. So 2 or 3 days later on Donahue, there was a program about escort services. And I thought, that's perfect. They even mentioned on this program that you could hire an escort using your MasterCard. And I thought, this is absolutely perfect. And I understand at this point I did not plan to write a comedy. This was going to be straight romantic suspense.
How about Rent-A-Gent?
Rent-A-Gent, yes, I love it. I should have thought of that, Rent-A-Gent. In fact, I may use that line in my latest book.
You steal from each other rather shamelessly,
yes,
don't
we
you?
do.
Yes.
And we steal from you, too.
That's true.
We do,
yes.
we do.
You have, yes.
So that was fine. I knew she was going to rent this man, but the question was, why would she rent a gent for the weekend, for the family reunion? Why did she not have one already in the flat? You know, she could open her wardrobe and there would be a row of them hanging up, and I'll take this one for this weekend.
Yeah, the blonde beard.
The blonde beard this weekend would look particularly nice, divine with my red gown. 2 or 3 days later on Donahue, there was a program about overweight women, and this is something I do feel strong about.
Did you do the escort service?
Have I done the escort service?
You've already mentioned the escort service.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, excuse me, yes. We're jumping ahead. So I thought, this woman has a weight problem, and that's something I can identify with. I feel strongly about the way society at times treats people with a weight problem, and I thought it would be really great to have my heroine be a large woman who not only gets the money, the ancestral home, but the gorgeous guy. And I started this book hoping to emulate the likes of Daphne du Maurier, Mary Stuart, Phyllis Whitney, but somehow Ellie got away from me. And in the subsequent books I've done, I think of myself as writing kitchen sink drama / comedy. I like to write from the viewpoint of the ordinary woman. Now, obviously, it's not so ordinary that she has this very nice house, but in the main, her life is very much that of an everyday woman.
Well, it's sort of Irma Bombeck meets Franz Kafka.
Yes,
one
yes,
could
you
say.
could say that. I don't quite understand that, but it sounds wonderful, and
It
yes,
is,
that's exactly
yeah.
what I do. And so Ellie determined that the books would be comedies, although I suppose that was already there in the premise. And
I don't think Ellie's aware that she determined, her behavior determined that the books are comedies, but I don't think she's aware that her life is
No,
is a
I think it's
comedy.
very important when you're writing that you're not cueing the reader that this is a joke.
No, she's very earnest
Yes.
and very serious,
Yes.
and it's the reader who's lying on the floor laughing.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I think that works a lot better than she giggled delightedly.
No, she doesn't.
No,
She's-
Ellie does read romance novels, as I have.
Yeah. She
done it in my
giggles.
book.
She giggles nervously.
Giggles, yes.
but not delightedly. Yes. How about you? You have the two protagonists. How did you come up with Claire and Arlie?
Well, my agent, when she suggested I write a mystery, said it was very important to come up with a series character.
This is series character, not
serious.
serious.
No.
Series
Series.
characters is important. Yeah.
And so I really worked very hard on the name, came up with Claire Malloy. At one point, she was going to be something quite giggly. What is Carolyn Hart's character?
Annie.
She was going to be an Annie, and I thought, no, Annie is such a nice name, and Annie would go over and play bridge with Ellie, and those kind of characters. I wanted a name with a little bit harder edge. I made her 37 because I was 37 at the time. Since 1985 to 1994, she is now 39. I am no longer 39. I gave her a bookstore because I thought, if I absolutely failed at writing mysteries, I could think of nothing that would be more fun than to have a bookstore, because all booksellers do is sit around all day and read books.
That is our fantasy.
When we go into bookstores and say this, the booksellers do not always agree.
No.
I gave her a teenage daughter for no particular reason, and I made her a widow whose husband had been hit by a chicken truck and went out in this great flurry of white feathers.
Now, why did you do that?
Well, it's kind of interesting, a topic once discussed by my shrink and me, because I was, in theory, happily married at the time. But I thought the perfect protagonist would be unencumbered. And by the time the book was published, I was also unencumbered. Of course, then Peter walked in. Peter Rosen, who's a cop.
You have a disgusted look on your face, like you're really unhappy about this.
Well,
turn
I
of
was real
events.
happy
Yeah.
with Peter in the first few books, but then he got very serious and has been pestering Claire no end to get married. And she does not want to marry him. She does not want to voluntarily give up half the closet space. She does not want to have someone who has a proprietorial interest in the pillow next to her head. So she keeps putting him off. This is why in Death by the Light of the Moon, she went to Louisiana. It was just to get out of town, and she had to talk to him on the phone, but this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I want him hit by a bus. but they won't
Relationships
let
do
me.
impose constraints. I
Yes.
have given Ellie and Ben twins,
I know.
and for every page I'm having to work around the twins. It's much more difficult raising twins in a book than it is raising them in real life, because I cannot have Ellie walk to the living room to make a phone call without having to make the reader feel secure that the twins are safely in the playpen.
Well, you and Carolyn Hart that you just mentioned are really almost the only two I can think of, I guess, who actually has a happily married couple in a mystery series. Isn't that? I mean, that's quite unusual. You have in both of your series. One of the women is desperately trying to avoid commitment, and the other woman is not looking for it much in Arlie Hanks, I think. But you seem quite happy with. I mean, you somehow managed to create both sexual tension and tension in the relationship, plus they obviously love each other in your series. I think that's remarkable.
When I wrote The Thin Woman, I did not realize I was writing a mystery.
No.
When I was told that the book might be difficult to sell because mysteries were not selling particularly well at that time. That has changed, of course. I thought this was an independent book. Then I was told this is a mystery, and mysteries work better when you have a serious character. And for me, it's been wonderful to work with Ellie. I enjoy her because I can use her voice to say many things that I feel strongly about, and I have a good time with her. I think of her as a good friend. But it is somewhat limiting because people are fond of Ellie and Ben, and I can't have them get divorced because...
You better not.
No, it would upset the reader. So I have to really find ways to make their marriage eventful so that the reader is aware that they do love each other. And yet there is... And it works too because Ellie is an insecure person. And she thinks of her husband as being incredibly gorgeous, and so she's a little watchful, I think. So I can do certain things within that relationship, but I still have a yearning to start another series. And if I did that, I would not bond those people in matrimony.
No. And of course, Carolyn Hart's done a new series too, where the woman is unencumbered, I think, isn't she? But then your second series, the Maggoties. Now, how did you come up with Arlie Hanks?
Well, my editor had asked me to do a third series. I was being exceedingly prolific at that time because they were paying me so little money. And he suggested a third series. He's the one that said, everybody is setting books in California, in New York, in Chicago, in Florida. No one is setting mysteries in Arkansas. I know this is hard for you to believe, but that was the truth back then. He said, you can make it your own. You can proclaim yourself the mistress of mystery from Arkansas. There was absolutely no competition at that time.
The Arkansas mystery maven, perhaps we could call you.
That's good. And then I regret to say, he said, my editor continued on with, and I want a little tiny backwoods, hole-in-the-ground town. That's what I want you to write about. I said, Michael, I live in a university town. We have a symphony orchestra. We have an art center. We wear shoes. We have plumbing. He was quite sure that I could find what he wanted. And I came up with the character of Arlie Hanks. This was right when it turned out I was not going to have an amiable divorce, au contraire. And I had amended the grounds to adultery and named names and restraining orders, and we were at the lawyers pretty much every day. I was boo-hooing hysterically. But in the midst of all this, I wrote Malice and Maggoty. I wrote it in 6 weeks.
Incredible, yeah.
And also in snake venom. My editor called me after I'd sent it to him, and he said, oh, it was fine. He was going to buy it. However, did I realize that it was 239 pages of unrelenting sarcasm? I said, yes, I'm in a mood. I said I couldn't possibly relent unless he sent me to the ABA in New Orleans so I could get out of town and stop sobbing at my lawyers every day. So he did, and I did tone the book down. But it was a very, very cathartic experience. This book just came tumbling out, obviously, in 6 weeks. This switching back and forth from first person to third person, I absolutely hate in anybody else's books, but it just happened. And there is a character that you, as you're reading along, assume is going to be murdered. A man, kind of a sleazy man, kind of an immoral man, who is not murdered. He is kept alive so that he can be tortured. And when he is found at the end of the book, he is in such terrible shape that he cannot walk. What has been done to him, I did not describe because I wanted the reader to get with the flow and think of something even worse than what I could think of.
So basically, readers might pick up your books because they've heard on a show like this that you are two of America's most successful authors of comedic mystery fiction. But in fact, there's a great deal more to your books than just the easy laugh and so forth. In fact, you touched on it a bit when you talked about how you felt strongly about the way overweight people are treated in this country. What is what is the sort of this, I don't know, the socially redeeming value in your books?
There is none, I'm sorry.
Yes, I know there is. She's assured me there is.
All of my books have the premise has sprung from an idea that made me laugh or an idea that made me angry, a concept. I have a very good friend. In fact, I dedicated my latest book to her. And her husband went out one day to walk the dog. He returned the dog, but he did not return himself. And after he'd been gone for 3 or 4 weeks, she decided that she would seek the advice of an attorney. So she went and talked to my husband, who is an attorney, and decided that she would get a divorce. And she told me that my husband had said that she would get half of everything. That was state law. So when my husband came back home that night, I said, what is she going to do? How is she going to survive? Half a house, half a garage, half a dog, presuming he wanted half the dog, is not going to stand her in very good stead, whereas this man has a career. The woman in this case had stayed at home because it was then considered the politically correct thing to do. She stayed at home, raised her children. So in her midlife years, she is dumped in a divorce situation. She had to go out and find whatever work she could find. And I said to my husband, this is wrong. He has his job, he has his career. She's got to start from scratch. And he said, well, that's the law. And my mother was sitting knitting, and she said, so sad, it would have been so much better if he died, wouldn't it? And I thought, of course it would. Of course it would. Then she would have had the entire house. She would have had the
entire
dog. And that gave me the idea for the Widows Club. And I belonged to a women's group, and which I found somewhat amusing at times. And I thought, what fun to have a group of women who meet and have the bridge group and the gardening group and all those other little things, and then they send the children out selling fudge to raise money for a perfectly commendable charity. But the basis of the club is to kill off people's husbands. And the grounds for murdering the husband would have to be abandonment, that a woman has been dumped in midlife. And I knew I was onto something when I mentioned the title, and women everywhere said, I sign up, I sign up. So I could have a lot of fun with this. I mean, it would be impossible to do with a straight face. But so I laughed, but at the core of the book was a feeling the rules changed on women such as myself. We were following the rules, and suddenly, 25, 30 years later, it's a totally different ball game.
Just what you both have been saying reminds me of how far the mystery has come, the possibilities of the mystery. As I recall the mysteries of the past, you had the Agatha Christie, of course, which was, I mean, they didn't deal with such personal problems of women because women's situation wasn't that problematical, I think, in Agatha Christie's time. Their roles were pretty well set and accepted. And then there's the other kind of mystery, the hard-boiled, mean streets mystery. And I was, when I read your novel, Femme Fatale, it starts out with one of the all-time great lines, which in fact has been rewarded by the Whimsy Foundation. He was a dark and stormy night. Well, when I read that line, I thought of the opening of Raymond Chandler's first novel, The Big Sleep, where the detective is Philip Marlowe, is going to interview his first client, and he's going into this mansion. And Raymond Chandler, to try to show us that the hero is a knight himself, a tarnished knight as he calls him, has him walk through this portal where there is a knight up on a stained glass window, and he's rescuing a maiden who's tied up to a tree, and she's naked, but she's got hair coming down over various parts. And the analogy, of course, he's trying to tell the reader that my Philip Marlowe is also a knight in Los Angeles. And that sort of was the standard of the mystery, and there's still a lot of writers out there writing that kind of, the male, the strong male who is rescuing the damsel in distress who's tied up in one sense or another to a tree. Usually she turns out to be just as tarnished as he is in mysteries today, but still he's the active agent. It seems to me that your mystery, just by even starting out with he was a dark and stormy night, you're almost making fun of that whole tradition of the mystery of the past.
I was, and I had a lot of fun with that book. The genesis for that book was another book that advocated that women wrap themselves in saran wrap and put a cherry in the navel, and you have dinner with flowers every night when he comes home, and somehow you manage to remove the children from the home so that you can have these seductive evenings 6 or 7 times a week. And I'm always thinking, poor grandma, who's likely to be stuck with these children. In the type of book we do, there is a new taboo. You cannot have, we are told, the man rescuing the woman. Now, in my books, I tend to have Ellie and Ben on occasion rescuing each other. But yes, I think the image of the knight in shining armor is tarnished, but it's that myth that women have sometimes, that we are going to be rescued, and as a reward for this, we have to wrap ourselves in saran wrap and stick the cherry in the navel. So with every book, there was something where I...
We still haven't, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I took great pleasure in a scene in Poisoned Pins. Right at the end, Claire has gotten into a very sticky situation. The murderer has a gun pointed at her. And I thought, oops, now what do we do now? We are not going to let the Mounties come pounding down the stairs, so Claire picked up a chair and hit the murderer in the face with it. And it was really a fun scene to write. I do not do graphic descriptions of the blood flying, but we just went whack, took care of that murderer.
Right. There's something about, you had mentioned earlier in your series, the Maggotty series, where you have 2 points of view going. One is you have actually first person Arlie Hanks, and then you have the community basically.
Well, I have other people's points of view, and then also the omniscient point of view, and upon occasion animal points of view.
I guess I've missed the animal point of view. No, I'm sorry.
You haven't read the scene where the skunk is busy in its little burrow.
Which book is this? We all must rush out and get it.
Well, it's in Malice and Maggotty, and then it's in another one.
Same
skunk, and somebody else comes
the skunk's point of view.
Steps on the skunk's tail, which is not at all a wise thing to do.
No.
And then we have a little bit of Marjorie's point of view. Marjorie is an exceedingly large sow who likes television.
That was a little too subtle for me, I'm afraid. But what I did notice is that you do you're the only author I've ever read, other than a Norwegian author named Knut Hamsun that I once...
my role model.
One of your role models.
My mentor.
Whoever jumped back between a communal point of view that gives a kind of a much broader perspective on what's going on and gives you the whole town, and the first person point of view. And this seems to be just sort of a part of your nihilism, your way of tearing up the mystery genre and saying it's up for grabs in your books. Did you consciously do this, or are you just naturally disrespectful?
I would like to think it's a talent that I've nurtured and until it's full blown. No, but I told you that the Maggotty book, I didn't think about this. I'm just pounding away at the word processor. I had a thought, but you rambled on for so long
that you just lost
that I've lost it.
It may come back. It may come back. Yes.
It's buried deep within your inner being.
Yes. What we're going to do, you said you were thinking of starting a new series. Are you going to do?
Yes, I am.
I mean, you're so prolific now. Let's see, we've established the fact that you've written 6 books to her 23.
Yes.
So now you're going to just rush out there and fill those gaps with another series, is that
I
it?
think I need to do something, I'm not certain whether it'll be the next book or the one following, that it makes a break from Ellie, because I don't want to get stale. I don't ever want to get bored with her. And I have 2 characters that appear in my book Down the Garden Path, which is the book I wrote first but sold second. And in that book there are 2 characters, Primrose and Hyacinth Tramwell, two elderly spinsters, coming from the days when we still referred to single women as spinsters.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot I can do with them. I think they're fun characters, and I have a plot in mind where I think they might invade this plot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I very much enjoy alternating my series. About the time I'm finishing a Claire book, I'm thinking it sure would be fun to go back to Maggotty. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Maggotty is so much easier to write than Claire, because when I have no idea what's going on, I just switch over to somebody else. And then I can come back and see if anybody's figured this out yet. Oops, no, let's go back to Dahlia and Kevin again. And I usually juggle about, well, 2 subplots and then the main plot, so I can usually figure out something. But it's nice, and then when I'm finishing a Maggotty, I start thinking, it sure would be fun to get to use a word with more than 4 letters again and switch back to Claire.
Right. We have a president, the President of the United States, who reads mysteries.
Yes.
And in fact, he comes from your state.
Yes.
Would you anticipate that he would really enjoy your Maggotty series?
Well, during the election, I've met him numerous times at political rallies.
Mm-hmm. Have you really?
Yeah,
You never can tell with you.
And I always say to him, I sent my book to the library, the governor's library, and he says, oh yes, and Hillary and I enjoyed it very much.
That's good.
He says this to me every time, so I'm sure this means that he and Hillary enjoyed my books very much, because why else would a politician say something like that to a potential voter?
That's true. I can't think of any reason whatsoever at all. Well, there's one other thing that I'm sure that a lot of people would like to know. Whatever happened to the television series that was going to be made out of the Maggotty books? We have about a minute for you to give us this story.
Well, they shot the pilot starring Kate Jackson, Polly Bergen, Ron Perlman, outside of Atlanta. I took my kids down and we watched for a couple of days. The pilot's pretty good, and at the last fateful moment, CBS declined to pick it up. So all year long, they'd picked up all these new shows. Every time one of them got canceled, I would just giggle evilly.
And what about you? Have you been picked up for
a couple
option?
of times, and it got close with the Widows Club. There was talk of Doris Day coming out of retirement.
Really?
But it did not come to be. I read about it in TV Guide.
You read about it in TV Guide that your Widows Club, Doris Day, was going to come out of. Well, we're out of time now for this show. It's been a great pleasure having you here. Dorothy Cannell and Joan Hess talking about the art of the mystery and the life and times of comedic mystery writers. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
A presentation of the Hennepin County Library.